Hey guys, welcome to another video. My name is Ian, I'm Ian the Reader, and today I have another Box Talks episode for you. So, if you missed my last one, Box Talks is a brand new series that I started recently in which I talk about Book of the Month, which is just the most awesome book subscription box ever, which you can get for $14.99, or you can use my link down below to get it for a reduced price for your first month if you've never done it before. My last Box Talks episode was a prediction video for what I thought was going to be in the December Book of the Month box, and this time I'm going to be doing a deep dive into the December picks and add-ons for Book of the Month. Very excited about it. I'm going to be covering each of the books that Book of the Month chose as their 5 main picks, as well as the 4 add-ons that we got for the month of December. For each book, I'm going to be going through the summary that is on the Book of the Month website, as well as providing you with additional details that could be important in your decision-making process on whether or not it is the book for you. I'm going to include timestamps, so there will be chapters for this video so that you can locate which books you're most interested in and go ahead and watch those specifically. That way you can skip the ones that you're not interested in if you just know your reading taste and you know that a certain genre is not for you. But those are there for you guys. You can watch the whole video if you want, or just skip around to what interests you the most, but I am going to be covering all 9 of the books that we got for the month of December. The first main pick that I'm going to be talking about is Olga Dies Dreaming by Xochitl Gonzalez. I hope that I said that correctly. I looked up a few YouTube videos trying to figure out how to pronounce her first name, and I think that I got it correctly, but if I did it wrong, I'm so sorry about that. This is a contemporary debut novel by Gonzalez, and it has been getting a lot of buzz. I've seen it all over the place on year-end, exciting titles coming out lists. I've seen it on Goodreads, I've seen it on Instagram, I've seen it all over the place. So I'm really excited about this one. I didn't pick it as my pick, but I do plan on reading it at some point. So I'm gonna go ahead and read the summary that is on the Book of the Month website, and then I'm gonna jump into some extra details that I found online. It's 2017, and Olga and her brother Pedro Prieto Acevedo are bold-faced names in their hometown of New York. Prieto is a popular congressman representing their gentrifying Latinx neighborhood in Brooklyn, while Olga is the Tony wedding planner for Manhattan's power brokers. Despite their alluring public lives, behind closed doors things are far less rosy. Sure, Olga can orchestrate the love stories of the 1%, but she can't seem to find her own until she meets Mateo, who forces her to confront the effects of long-held family secrets. Olga and Prieto's mother, Blanca, a young lord turned radical, abandoned her children to advance a militant political cause, leaving them to be raised by their grandmother. Now, with the winds of the hurricane season, Blanca has come barreling back into their lives. Set against the backdrop of New York City in the months surrounding the most devastating hurricane in Puerto Rico's history, Xochitl Gonzalez's Olga Dies Dreaming is a story that examines political corruption, familial strife, and the very notion of the American dream, all while asking what it really means to weather a storm. I think that is a great synopsis for the book. I think that it communicates a lot of the themes that you're going to find in the book, as well as just communicating the plot in a really interesting and compelling way. Like I said, I have not read this book, and I didn't pick it as my main pick, but I think I may actually add this one as an add-on in the future. Just because of the information that I found out about it, I am very eager to read it. So, a few things to know about this book. First, like I said, this is a debut novel, so if you're wanting to find a new author that you can follow their history and their books as they come out, this is a great place to start. It is contemporary, but it does seem to have, not exactly a historical fiction, but there's a past and present aspect to it, and in addition to that, it's definitely going to be multicultural, which is really important. The current Goodreads score for Olga Dies Dreaming is a 4.22, which is actually the highest Goodreads score of the main picks for December. There are only 174 ratings so far, but it does give a good indication of where the Goodreads score is heading and just generally how people are feeling about this book. The official release date for Olga Dies Dreaming is January 14th, so if you were to order it now, you would definitely have time to read it before release date, so you could post a review. If you post reviews on Instagram or Goodreads, you could post one on those sites on release date, which would be really great. And then on top of that, it just gives you an early peek into what's coming next year. The page count for Olga Dies Dreaming is 384, so it's a good length novel. It's not quite 400 pages, but it is a little bit more on the lengthy side of what Book of the Month typically does. Another thing that makes this a really great option for your Book of the Month pick is the fact that it has already been picked up by Hulu for an adaptation. I believe it's coming out in 2022. It could be later than that, but I do believe it's coming out next year. It stars Aubrey Plaza, who played April in Parks and Recreation. She is going to be playing Olga in this adaptation, and her brother is being played by Raymond Rodriguez, who was in The Wire. So those are 2 really notable actors who are going to be in it. And then in addition to that, the author of the book is the one who is writing the pilot for the show. So I think that's really great that she's on board with just making sure the show is really faithful to the book. And in addition to that, just capturing the themes and ideas that she had in mind when she wrote the book. I would say that this is for fans of previous Book of the Month picks like Infinite Country by Patricia Engel or Dominicana by Angie Cruz. So if you've been drawn to those previous Book of the Month picks, this could be the Book of the Month for you. All right, so the second Book of the Month pick that I'm going to be talking about today is A History of Wild Places by Shay Earnshaw. Now this one I did predict in my December predictions video, so that's awesome. And this was the Book of the Month pick that I went with. I'm going to go ahead and get into the synopsis of this one. Travis Wren has an unusual talent for locating missing people. Hired by families as a last resort, he requires only a single object to find the person who has vanished. When he takes on the case of Maggie St. James, a well-known author of dark, macabre children's stories, he's led to a place many believe to be only a legend. Called Pastoral, the reclusive community was founded in the 1970s by like-minded people searching for a simpler way of life. By all accounts, the commune shouldn't exist anymore, and soon after Travis stumbles upon it, he disappears, just like Maggie St. James. Years later, Theo, a lifelong member of Pastoral, discovers Travis's abandoned truck beyond the border of the community. No one is allowed in or out, not when there's a risk of bringing a disease, rot, into Pastoral. Unraveling mystery of what happened reveals secrets that Theo, his wife Kala, and her sister B keep from one another. Secrets that prove their perfect isolated world isn't as safe as they believed, and that darkness takes many forms. Hauntingly beautiful, hypnotic, and bewitching, A History of Wild Places is a story about fairy tales, our fear of the dark, and losing yourself within the wilderness of your mind. Oh my gosh, I love that synopsis. I've already read it before, the synopsis, but every time I read it, I get excited about picking this book up. So, yes, I am so excited about this one, but here are a few things that you may want to know about this book. So this is categorized on Book of the Month as magical realism. I think it definitely leans more towards like the thriller genre than it does fantasy, and having it listed as magical realism makes sense just because of where the book seems to be headed. But it definitely gives me more thriller vibes than it does like fantasy vibes, traditionally at least. A History of Wild Places is not Earnshaw's debut. She actually has published 2 other novels before this, both of them being YA fantasy novels that I've actually seen around quite a bit. I didn't realize that she had written these 2 novels, but she's also the author of The Wicked Deep and Winterwood, both of which I've seen on Instagram and Goodreads and BookTube and stuff like that. So those have gotten a lot of buzz and have had pretty good reviews as well. Currently, this book has a Goodreads rating of a 4.21 with 346 ratings so far. Now that's about double the amount of ratings that Olga Dies Dreaming has, and it's at a 4.21, so it's about in the same spot as Olga Dies Dreaming, and a 4.21 is like a pretty dang good rating, so it definitely has a lot of people's stamps of approval. The official release date of this one is December 7th, so like I said in my predictions video, it's not exactly an early release because by the time you receive it, it'll basically be out anyway, but it's an exciting release, so that's important to think about. The page count for this one is 368 pages, and in my opinion, I think this is for fans of previous Book of the Month picks like Beast of Extraordinary Circumstance by Ruth Emmy Lang and Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. That's that book. Let's move on to the next one. The third book is A Flicker in the Dark by Stacey Willingham. I also picked this one as an add-on in my box because it just sounded so dang good. I had not heard of this one before, but when I read the description, it just sold me immediately. Here's the synopsis. When Chloe David was 12, 6 teenage girls went missing in her small Louisiana town. By the end of the summer, Chloe's father had been arrested as a serial killer and promptly put in prison. Chloe and the rest of her family were left to grapple with the truth and try to move forward while dealing with the aftermath. Now 20 years later, Chloe is a psychologist in private practice and getting ready for her wedding. She finally has a fragile grasp on the happiness she's worked so hard to get. Sometimes, though, she feels as out of control of her own life as the troubled teens who are her patients. And then a local teenage girl goes missing, and then another, and that terrifying summer comes crashing back. Is she paranoid and seeing parallels that aren't really there, or for the second time in her life, is she about to unmask a killer? It sounds so good, doesn't it? Oh man, I think this sounds so great. I'm really, really excited about getting this one in my box. A Flicker in the Dark is a debut novel by Stacey Willingham. It's obviously a thriller. Currently, this book has a Goodreads rating of a 4.21, which is the same rating as A History of Wild Places and only 0.01 off of Olga Dies Dreaming, so that's interesting. And it currently has 320 ratings, so about the same as A History of Wild Places. But so far, all 3 of these books have really great reviews on Goodreads, and you'd honestly be getting a good book regardless of which one you pick, in my opinion. The official release date for this is January 11th, so it's another early release, which is exciting. The page count is 368 pages, and like Olga Dies Dreaming, this one has already been picked up for an adaptation, but instead of on Hulu, this one is going to be on HBO Max. It is being headed by Emma Stone and David McCary's production banner Fruit Tree and A24, which I love. Is it A24 or A24? I've heard it both ways. So, but anyway, that's really exciting that that's getting an adaptation as well. I think this would be a super interesting show to watch, and yeah, I'm excited about it. I think this would be great for fans of previous Book of the Month picks such as The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell or Final Girls by Riley Sager. The fourth Book of the Month pick for December was Somebody's Daughter by Ashley C. Ford. Now this was kind of a weird pick in my opinion because of the fact that this book actually released on June 1st of this year. I always think it's interesting when they pick books that have been out for a few months. They actually did that with one of the add-ons as well, and it makes more sense to me when it's an add-on than when it's a main pick because this book has literally been out for like 6 months already almost. Like on the dot practically, and so it's just kind of an odd one, but that doesn't mean it's not a good one because it does sound really interesting. I'm gonna go ahead and read the synopsis for Somebody's Daughter. For as long as she could remember, Ashley has put her father on a pedestal. Despite having only vague memories of seeing him face to face, she believes he's the only person in the entire world who understands her. She thinks she understands him too. He's sensitive like her, an artist, and maybe even just as afraid of the dark. She's certain that one day they'll be reunited again and she'll finally feel complete. There are just a few problems. He's in prison, and she doesn't know what he did to end up there. Through poverty, puberty, and a fraught relationship with her mother, Ashley returns to her image of her father for hope and encouragement. She doesn't know how to deal with the incessant worries that keep her up at night or how to handle the changes in her body that draw unwanted attention from men. In her search for unconditional love, Ashley begins dating a boy her mother hates. When the relationship turns sour, he assaults her. Still reeling from the rape, which she keeps secret from her family, Ashley finally finds out what her father is in prison for, and that's where the story really begins. Somebody's Daughter steps into the world of growing up a poor black girl, exploring how isolating and complex such a childhood can be. As Ashley battles her body and her environment, she provides a poignant coming-of-age recollection that speaks to finding the threads between who you are and what you were born into, and the complicated familial love that often binds them. So, this definitely seems like a powerful and hard-hitting memoir for sure, and I think it's a great addition to the Book of the Month catalog. Like I said, my only weird thing was that it was added 6 months later. I think this would have been a great pick back in May, and it still is, but a lot of people have already read this one. I haven't, but I'm definitely drawn to it now that I've heard what it is about. A few things about Somebody's Daughter. Like I said before, it is a memoir and it is a debut book by the author. She has written like articles and essays in like newspapers and magazines and things like that and online, but this is her first book. The current Goodreads score for Somebody's Daughter is a 4.15 with 21,514 ratings. So it is definitely a well-read and well-loved book for 2021, and it's definitely one you'll want to check out. The official release date for this, like I said, was June 1st, so it's already been out for about 6 months. The page count for this is 224, so if you're looking for a nonfiction book that is not too long, something really easy to get into, this could be a good one for you, and it's a great book to squeeze in right at the end of the year. Another interesting thing about this book, if you didn't want to get this as your Book of the Month pick, but you were interested in reading it in some way, the audiobook is narrated by the author, which I always think is so cool when the audiobook is actually narrated by the person who wrote the words, because I think it adds like a really interesting aspect and dynamic to the reading experience, so I love that. This was also featured in NPR's article on 12 memoirs NPR staff loved in 2021, so that's cool. It has their recommendation. I would also say that this is a great Book of the Month pick for people who were fans of previous Book of the Month picks like Aftershocks by Nadia Owusu and Crying at H Mart by Michelle Zauner. There you go. And the last main pick for the month of December is The Holiday Swap by Maggie Knox. Now this one has been getting quite a bit of buzz. It's one of those classic holiday romance stories that a lot of people are really into around this time of year, and here is the synopsis for it. All I want for Christmas is a different life. When chef Charlie Goodwin gets hit on the head on the LA set of her reality baking show, she loses a lot more than consciousness. She also loses her ability to taste and smell, both critical to her success as show judge. Meanwhile, Charlie's identical twin, Cass, is frantically trying to hold her own life together back in their quaint mountain hometown, while running the family's bustling bakery and dealing with her ex, who won't get the memo that they're over. With only days until Christmas, a desperate Charlie asks Cass to do something they haven't done since they were kids: switch places. Looking for her own escape from reality, Cass agrees, but temporarily trading lives proves more complicated than they imagined, especially when rugged firefighter Jake Greenman and gorgeous physician's assistant Miguel Rodriguez are thrown into the mix. Will the twins' identity swap be a recipe for disaster, or does it have all the right ingredients for getting their lives back on track? So, there you go. It seems like quite the complicated situation they're getting themselves into with that one. But if you're a fan of romance, if you're a fan of holiday-themed book, this seems like a great option for you. It is a romance debut novel. It is currently sitting at a 3.71 on Goodreads, so a little bit lower than the other ones, but not a bad rating by any means. And it has 2,450 ratings, so it does have a pretty significant amount of ratings and reviews on there as well. The official release date for this one was October 5th, but it does make sense that it was pushed to the December box because of the fact that it's the holiday holidays. It's the perfect time to read it. The page count for this one comes in at 351, which seems a little bit long for a romance book, but not too long, so I think it should be pretty easy to get into around this time of year. I would say that if you're ever going to read this, this is a great time to do it, because who wants to read a Christmas romance story in like March or April? This is the perfect time to read this one, so if you feel interested in this one, it might be right for you. I would say this is a good one for people who enjoyed previous holiday romance picks like In a Holidays by Christina Lauren and One Day in December by Josie Silver. All right, now I'm going to briefly jump into the December add-ons. There were 4 this month, so there were quite a few, not as many as last month. Last month, I feel like there were like 6 or something like that. But we had a really interesting selection for the add-ons this month. I'm not gonna go too deeply into these, but I am going to briefly tell you what they're about, as well as a few important things to know about each one. For the add-ons for December, we actually got 2 essay collections. The first of those is But You Seemed So Happy, A Marriage in Bits and Pieces by Kimberly Harrington. The quick take for this one on the Book of the Month website says, in these witty essays, divorce is an onion. It's got a lot of layers and is bound to make you cry with laughter. So it's good that it's not just emotional, it's got a lot of laughter and wit in there as well. This book, like I said, is written by Kimberly Harrington. It is actually her second collection of essays, so if you get this book and you enjoy it, there's another essay collection out there for you. The current Goodreads score for this book is a 4.21 and it has 141 ratings. So it doesn't have a ton of ratings, but a 4.21 is a really great score in my opinion. The page count for this one is 304 and the official release date for this was October 5th. So it's been out for a couple months, but it is a great time to read it anyway. The second collection of essays that were selected for add-on options in the month of December is The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green. Now, the name John Green may sound familiar to you, and that is because he is a wildly popular young adult writer traditionally, and this is his first work of nonfiction. He wrote previous books like The Fault in Our Stars and Looking for Alaska and things like that, so you've definitely heard of him before, I imagine. Maybe you haven't, I don't know. But anyway, the quick take for this on the Book of the Month website is, in this witty collection of essays filled with insightful ideas, John Green reviews the faults and merits in ourselves. So I actually own this book and I've read the first few essays in it, so it's essentially him like reviewing things from everyday life. You know, like he thinks about like the star scale, like 1 to 5 stars, and he just talks about in his essays different things, whether it's things like crazy about our world or things as, you know, commonplaces like Dr. Pepper or something like that. It's definitely an interesting collection, and it is actually adapted from a podcast of the same name that John Green did a few years ago. The current Goodreads score for this one is actually really dang high. It sits at a 4.48 with 26,632 reviews. That's a really high score, honestly, especially with that many reviews. It's amazing that it's at a 4.48. This seems like a really great nonfiction pick if you're wanting to get into nonfiction, but you don't really know where to start, just because John Green's writing and his voice is very, very approachable, in my opinion. I think it's a great place to start. The audiobook for this one is also narrated by John Green, which is also great, and so if you don't pick this one as a main pick, but you do want to read it, the audiobook is a great option. The official release date for this was May 18th, so I am wondering why it's a pick now, but it makes more sense that this is an add-on pick than a main pick if it was released that long ago. The third nonfiction add-on that we got in the month of December is Tastemakers, 7 Immigrant Women Who Revolutionized Food in America by Mayuk Sen. So the quick take for Book of the Month says, sometimes a melting pot is not a metaphor. This book profiles immigrant women who left an inedible I meant indelible. Clearly I'm thinking about food. An indelible mark on how we eat. This is a narrative nonfiction piece and it is a debut by the author. The current Goodreads score is a 3.98 with 45 ratings. The page count is 288 and the official release date for this was November 16th. So it did just come out last month as a new release and that's really exciting. I can't read books about food or like with food as a central point to them because then I just get so hungry while I'm reading, and I am not the type of person who can read and eat at the same time because I'm terrified I'm just gonna like spill soup on my book, and that does not work with me. And the last add-on that we got for the month of December is The Postmistress of Paris by Meg Waite Clayton. This is a historical fiction book that I've actually seen quite a bit on Goodreads and on Instagram. The author has written numerous other novels, a lot of them being historical fiction before, so if you get this book and you enjoy it, you should definitely check out her other books. The quick take for this book on Book of the Month says, beautiful and wealthy, this heiress could choose any path. Her choice, to help smuggle artists out of Vichy, France? I don't know how to say that, but that's so cool. I think it has a great concept to it. It sounds really fast-paced and really interesting, and you know, it's got a good vibe. I like it. This book is currently sitting at a Goodreads score of 4.24, which is really great. It only has 67 ratings so far, so you should definitely read it and add more ratings because it seems like quite the book. The page count for this one is 416, so it is the longest of the options for the month of December, but it's not terribly long, it's just barely over that 400 page mark. The official release date for this book is November 30th, so it just came out, so if this book sounds interesting, it is a perfect time to read it. But that is all of the December picks and add-ons. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments which book you decided to pick for your December Book of the Month box, or if you decided to skip, that's totally fine too. I have definitely skipped my fair share of Book of the Month boxes. Make sure you leave a comment, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell because I post videos every Tuesday and Friday and sometimes on extra days like this video, and you definitely don't want to miss one. I have my January predictions video for the January Book of the Month box coming out in a week or two, so I definitely want you to be included in that discussion. But thank you guys so much for watching. Don't be a stranger, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!